The path cut through the dry grasslands outside Genova was quiet, except for the scrape of a boy's sandals against the dirt. He couldn't have been more than 12, walking alone with the hesitant steps of someone who didn't want to be where he was, but didn't see another option. A man walked beside him, older, heavy-set, thick glasses slipping down his nose, the kind of face that looked ordinary enough to blend into any crowd. He spoke softly, offering the boy food, a small job, anything that made the walk seem harmless. To anyone watching from the road, nothing looked unusual. That was how Luis Garavito operated. He stayed invisible until he was alone with the child he had chosen. By the early 1990s, Colombia was caught between guerrilla conflict, paramilitary violence, and deep poverty that pushed thousands of children onto the streets. Boys sold candy at intersections, begged outside bus terminals, slept under torn tarps near markets. They were vulnerable, unprotected, and often unnoticed, exactly the population Garavito targeted. He traveled constantly, drifting from city to city, sometimes posing as a charity worker, sometimes a monk, a teacher, a street vendor. His disguises changed easily. His glasses, his mustache, his clothes, everything shifted depending on where he was and what he needed people to see. Police would later piece together how he operated. He watched boys from a distance first, learning their patterns. If one was alone often enough, hungry often enough, desperate enough, Garavito approached with practiced ease. He offered money, shoes, or a meal. Sometimes he carried small toys or candy. His voice stayed calm and reassuring, giving nothing away. Once a child agreed to walk with him, the danger multiplied. Garavito looked for isolated places, abandoned lots, fields, patches of forest behind towns. He preferred spots where noise didn't carry and where the body wouldn't be found immediately. Disappearances rose across the country, but they blended into the broader chaos of the era. Families reported missing sons to local police, who often had neither the staff nor the mandate to investigate deeply. Many cases were dismissed as runaways. Some rural departments didn't communicate with others at all. Garavito counted on that confusion. No one connected the cases, and he kept moving. In 1997, everything began to shift. Workers clearing land near the town of Palmyra uncovered human remains, small bones, clothing scraps, shoes sized for boys. Police arrived and found more bodies nearby. The area wasn't a single crime scene. It was one of many scattered across regions Garavito had passed through. Investigators realized the remains belonged to multiple victims, and the manner of death was disturbingly similar from one site to another. For the first time, authorities suspected a serial predator. A task force formed, drawing officers from several departments. They combed through records, cross-checking missing child reports with discoveries of unidentified remains. Patterns emerged, clusters of victims along highways, near sugarcane fields, beside rural paths outside medium-sized towns. Witness statements hinted at a man with glasses, sometimes limping slightly, sometimes wearing a fake priest's collar. But the descriptions weren't consistent. Garavito's disguises worked almost too well. Despite the growing evidence, investigators still lacked a name. That changed later that year when a schoolboy escaped an attempted abduction. He described a man who had lured him toward a remote area, but fled when others approached. The boy remembered the man's glasses and the way he kept adjusting them nervously. The detail wasn't enough to make an identification, but it became one more piece in a puzzle finally being assembled. As police reviewed crime scenes, they found objects Garavito had dropped: receipts, a pair of broken glasses, a small notebook filled with lists and numbers that made little sense at first. But one item led them directly to him: a receipt from a store where a clerk remembered the purchaser. Officers traced the transaction, eventually arriving at a boarding house where Garavito had rented a room not long before. The owner described him clearly. Now they had a face. Soon, they had a name. In April 1999, police in Villavicencio responded to a report of a suspicious man watching children near a marketplace. When officers arrived, they found him sitting on a curb, disheveled, smelling of alcohol, his glasses bent. He gave a false name, but fingerprints confirmed it. The man they had been hunting for years, across multiple departments, dozens of towns, and hundreds of miles, was sitting quietly at their feet. During questioning, Garavito tried at first to deny everything, but investigators confronted him with evidence from various crime scenes, clothing fragments, footprints, the notebook. When they played recordings of the interviews with families of missing boys, he began to break. Over the next days, he confessed in detail, describing attacks with a cold, methodical precision that hollowed out the room. Officers listened as he named victims, locations, the order in which he had traveled. Each confession connected directly to a missing child case that had gone cold. The scale of what he admitted to stunned even veteran investigators. They cross-checked his statements with exhumations, and everything lined up: geography, timelines, cause of death. He knew details no outsider could have invented. Although the exact victim count remained uncertain, the number exceeded anything authorities had ever encountered. In Colombia's modern history, no single offender had taken so many children. News of the arrest spread fast. Families traveled long distances to demand answers, carrying photographs of boys who had vanished years earlier. Some wanted confirmation. Others hoped for even a small chance that their sons might still be alive. For many, Garavito's confession gave them a truth they had feared but never resolved. Their children had been targeted deliberately, not lost accidentally in the violence of the era. The courts processed the case with urgency. Garavito faced charges tied to dozens of murders, each carrying heavy sentences. But Colombia's legal system placed strict limits on maximum prison time, even for the worst offenders. In court, Garavito appeared subdued, speaking softly when addressed. He accepted responsibility, not out of remorse, but because the evidence left no room for denial. He described his actions with no visible emotion, even as judges read his sentences one by one. When the final rulings were issued, the total time added up to hundreds of years. Colombian law capped his actual prison term to a fraction of that, but officials imposed strict conditions ensuring he would remain behind bars indefinitely. Public outrage erupted. No one believed a man responsible for so many deaths should ever walk free. The case sparked national debates about sentencing laws, child protection policies, and the failures that had allowed him to operate across the country undetected for so long. In the years that followed, investigators continued to link Garavito to additional crime scenes. Some families finally received confirmation through DNA tests and recovered remains. Others remained in the haunting limbo of never knowing for certain. Garavito lived out his incarceration under heavy guard, isolated from other inmates and from the public, his name becoming synonymous with predatory violence against children. What made the case so hard for Colombia to absorb wasn't just the number of victims, but the context that allowed it to happen. The country was overwhelmed by larger conflicts, bombings, kidnappings, territorial battles that overshadowed the quieter, more hidden threat moving through its towns. Garavito understood that. He used it. He followed the movement of displaced families, the flow of street children, the gaps between overtaxed police departments. He thrived in environments where boys went missing without immediate alarm. As the story settled into public memory, it reshaped how law enforcement tracked missing children. New registries formed, interdepartment communication improved, schools and shelters became more vigilant about strangers approaching boys near their grounds. The hunt for Garavito forced the system to evolve. For the families, none of the reforms erased the loss. Many visited the sites where remains were found, leaving small offerings, flowers, shoes, toys. They spoke quietly about the sons they had raised and the futures that had been stolen. For them, the face behind the thick glasses would always represent the moment their child disappeared from the world. Garavito died in custody after years of declining health. His death closed the chapter legally, but not emotionally. Across Colombia, the stories remained, names etched into reports, families tracing the last known movements of their children, investigators remembering the long process of connecting one crime scene to another until the pattern finally emerged. His crimes left a scar that stretched across regions and decades, a reminder of what could grow unchecked when a society is overwhelmed by larger battles. But it also left a record, evidence, testimony, reform, that reshaped how the country protected its most vulnerable. The truth of what he did could never be undone, but the vigilance that followed ensured no predator could exploit the same blind spots again. Thank you for listening to Homicide Files. Subscribe for more true crime stories.